It is May 5th, 1945. Adolf Hitler has been dead for 5 days. The war in Europe is technically over. But in the Austrian Alps, one final, insane battle is about to begin. If you looked through a pair of binoculars at the medieval fortress known as Castle Itter on this specific morning, you would see something that defies every logic of World War II. You would see an American Sherman tank parked at the main gate. Beside it, American Gs are loading their weapons. But standing right next to them, shoulder to shoulder, are soldiers of the German Wehrmacht, and they are pointing their guns in the same direction. They are not fighting each other. They are preparing to fight together against a common enemy. This is the story of the only battle in history where the US Army and the German Army joined forces to save the lives of French politicians from a fanatical SS division. It sounds like a bad movie script, but every single word of it is true. This is the battle for Castle Itter. To understand how we got here, we have to look inside the castle. Castle Itter wasn't just a fortress. It was a VIP prison for the Third Reich's most high-value hostages. Trapped inside were former French Prime Ministers Édouard Daladier and Paul Reynaud, generals like Maxime Weygand, and even the famous tennis star Jean Barret. For years, they had been held here as bargaining chips. But by May 1945, the guards had fled. The prisoners were free, but they were also terrified. The forests surrounding the castle were crawling with the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division die-hard Nazis who had orders to execute the prisoners rather than let them be liberated. The prisoners were sitting ducks in a stone cage. Desperate, they sent a handyman on a bicycle to pedal through the war zone to find help. The handyman didn't find the Americans first. He found a German major named Josef Gangl. Gangl was an officer who had grown disillusioned with the Nazis and was actively working with the Austrian resistance. To protect civilians from the SS, he wanted to surrender, but he knew his handful of men couldn't stop a panzer division alone. He needed heavy armor. So Gangl jumped in his Kubelwagen and drove toward the American lines under a massive white flag. He ran into the 23rd Tank Battalion of the US 12th Armored Division and met Captain Jack Lee. Lee was the quintessential American tanker, brash, aggressive, and constantly chewing on a cigar. When a German officer rolled up and asked for help saving French politicians, Lee didn't hesitate. He looked at Gangl and reportedly said, "If you fight with me, I'll fight with you." What happened next was the strangest road trip of the war. Captain Lee took his lead tank, a Sherman named Besaut and Jenny, and a handful of American infantry. Major Gangl brought a truckload of his best Wehrmacht soldiers. Together, this bizarre hybrid column drove back into Nazi-held territory. They broke through SS roadblocks, driving straight up the winding mountain road to the castle. When they arrived, the French prisoners were confused, cheering for the Americans, but recoiling at the sight of the Germans jumping off the trucks. But there was no time for politics. Lee parked Besaut and Jenny right at the main gate to block the entrance. The American Gs and German soldiers took up positions in the windows, sharing ammunition and cigarettes. They settled in for a long night, knowing the SS would come at dawn. As the sun rose on May 5th, hell broke loose. The SS launched a full-scale assault from the surrounding woods. Bullets shattered the castle windows. An 88mm anti-tank shell slammed into Besaut and Jenny, turning the American tank into a burning wreck. Captain Lee and his crew barely escaped before it exploded. Now, they were cut off. The radio was dead. The tank was gone. It was a desperate firefight. Inside the keep, the scene was chaotic. You had American Gs firing M1 Garands, German soldiers firing Mausers, and elderly French politicians in suits firing stolen submachine guns out of the library windows. Tennis star Jean Barret actually volunteered to vault over the castle wall and run through SS fire to guide reinforcements, a move that would have been suicide for anyone else. But the defense was crumbling. The SS were setting up explosives to blow the gate. In the heat of the battle, former Prime Minister Paul Reynaud was exposing himself to fire. Major Gangl, the German officer who had started this whole alliance, saw a sniper taking aim. He sprinted across the roof and shoved Reynaud out of the way, taking the bullet himself. Major Gangl died instantly, a German officer killed by a German bullet while saving a French leader. It was the ultimate act of redemption. Just as the SS were preparing to storm the walls and execute everyone inside, the ground began to shake. The sound of heavy engines echoed off the mountains. The American relief column, the 142nd Infantry Regiment, had arrived. They smashed through the SS lines, scattering the fanatics into the woods. The siege was broken. The prisoners were saved. As the dust settled, American and German soldiers shook hands one last time before the Germans were formally taken into custody as POWs. Captain Jack Lee was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Major Gangl was honored as a hero of the Austrian resistance. It remains the only time in history that the Star-Spangled Banner flew over a German unit in combat, a battle where enemies became brothers, just for one day, to stop the darkness from winning.